My name is Jessica Martinez, and the day I walked into my corner office to find it stripped bare with a demolition notice taped to my door, I thought my 5-year climb up the corporate ladder at TechFlow Solutions had reached its devastating end. The woman responsible sat smugly behind a maintenance clipboard, declaring my carefully curated workspace structurally unsound and beyond economical repair. What I discovered 6 months later about her real motivations and the web of deception that connected our families would expose a truth so shocking it changed everything I believed about ambition, loyalty, and the price of success. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 34, I had constructed what most professionals would consider an enviable career through methodical planning and unwavering dedication. My MBA from University of Texas had opened doors, but it was my strategic thinking and ability to transform complex marketing challenges into measurable results that had secured my position as Senior Marketing Coordinator at TechFlow Solutions. Austin's thriving tech scene offered countless opportunities, but TechFlow represented something special, a mid-sized company with Fortune 500 ambitions and the innovative culture to achieve them. My corner office on the 3rd floor served as both workspace and sanctuary, a testament to the professional identity I had carefully cultivated over 5 years with the company. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unobstructed view of downtown Austin's evolving skyline, where glass towers reflected the city's technological renaissance. The space itself told the story of my journey. 3 industry awards mounted on the wall behind my desk, each representing campaigns that had exceeded client expectations and generated measurable revenue growth. My diploma and various certifications created a visual narrative of continuous learning and professional development, while carefully selected plants and a few personal photographs softened the environment without compromising its business-focused aesthetic. The office represented more than square footage or impressive views. It embodied validation of my capabilities in an industry where proving yourself required constant demonstration of value. Every element had been deliberately chosen, from the ergonomic furniture that supported long working hours to the whiteboard where I mapped strategic campaigns that had become company legends. Colleagues regularly commented on the space's professional atmosphere, noting how it reflected both achievement and accessibility. Junior staff members felt comfortable seeking mentorship within those walls, while executives viewed it as evidence of my readiness for increased responsibilities. My personal life complemented this professional success with equal intentionality. David and I had met through mutual friends at a University of Texas alumni mixer, bonding over shared values regarding career ambition balanced with authentic partnership. As a software engineer at a competing firm, he understood the demands of Austin's competitive tech environment while maintaining perspective about work-life integration. Our marriage represented a meeting of minds rather than a merger of convenience. 2 professionals who had chosen each other with the same strategic thinking we applied to career decisions. We had purchased a contemporary home in Cedar Park, close enough to downtown for reasonable commutes, but distant enough to provide respite from the city's frenetic energy. David's practical nature balanced my tendency toward perfectionism, while my strategic planning skills complemented his technical problem-solving approach. Weekend mornings found us exploring Austin's renowned food scene, or hiking the trails around Lady Bird Lake, maintaining the physical and mental health that sustained our demanding professional schedules. The foundation of our relationship rested on mutual respect for each other's ambitions and a shared commitment to building something substantial together. Neither of us had rushed into marriage or major purchases. Instead, we had approached each milestone with careful consideration and aligned goals. Our 5-year plan included eventual homeownership in Central Austin, expanded professional responsibilities, and perhaps children once our careers reached sustainable plateaus. Everything proceeded according to carefully mapped timelines, reflecting the systematic approach that had served us both well in our respective fields. TechFlow Solutions fostered exactly the type of environment where methodical planning and strategic thinking flourished. Founded by Robert Chen, a former IBM executive who had relocated to Austin specifically to capitalize on the city's emerging tech ecosystem, the company specialized in business automation software that helped traditional industries modernize their operations. The client base ranged from regional manufacturing companies to national retail chains, all seeking technological solutions to improve efficiency and reduce costs. The company culture embodied Austin's unique blend of professional ambition and casual accessibility. While dress codes remained flexible and the office featured modern amenities, like a fully stocked kitchen and recreational areas, the underlying expectation for performance excellence permeated every department. Success was measured through concrete metrics: quarterly revenue growth, client retention rates, project completion timelines, and market expansion indicators that left little room for subjective evaluation. My role as Senior Marketing Coordinator positioned me at the intersection of creative strategy and business development. I oversaw campaigns for our 3 largest client sectors, managed a team of 4 marketing professionals, and collaborated directly with the sales department to ensure our messaging aligned with market demands. The position required constant adaptation as client needs evolved and new competitors entered the marketplace, but it also offered the intellectual stimulation and growth opportunities that had drawn me to the field initially. The marketing department operated with the efficiency of a well-calibrated machine. Sarah Kim, my closest colleague and confidant, brought analytical rigor to campaign development that perfectly complemented my strategic overview capabilities. Michael Davis contributed innovative digital marketing expertise, while Emily Walsh handled the administrative coordination that kept our multiple projects moving forward simultaneously. Alex Rivera's graphic design skills elevated our visual communications beyond industry standards, creating materials that clients frequently praised for their professional impact. Our recent successes had positioned the department for significant expansion. The previous quarter had delivered record-breaking results, with 3 major campaigns exceeding their projected ROI by margins that had impressed even the executive team. Robert Chen had mentioned potential promotion opportunities during our last all-hands meeting, specifically noting the marketing department's contributions to the company's strongest financial performance since its founding. These achievements represented years of collaborative effort and strategic positioning, creating momentum that seemed poised to carry our entire team to new levels of responsibility and recognition. Jennifer Hayes, our marketing director, had been increasingly vocal about her confidence in our department's trajectory. During our weekly strategy sessions, she regularly discussed plans for expanding our client base and potentially opening satellite offices in Dallas and Houston within the next 18 months. My role in these expansion plans appeared substantial, with Jennifer explicitly mentioning my readiness for increased leadership responsibilities and broader strategic oversight of regional campaigns. The timing seemed perfect for the next phase of both my personal and professional development. David and I had recently paid off his student loans ahead of schedule, freeing up financial resources for accelerated savings toward our central Austin home purchase. My performance reviews consistently exceeded expectations, with specific commendations for my ability to manage complex projects while maintaining team morale and client satisfaction. Everything suggested that the careful foundation we had built was ready to support the next level of achievement and recognition. Austin's professional networking community had embraced my contributions as well. My involvement with the Austin Tech Women's Alliance had led to board membership and speaking opportunities at industry conferences throughout the Southwest. These external recognitions enhanced my value to TechFlow while building relationships that could benefit the company's business development efforts. The virtuous cycle of professional growth felt sustainable and promising, suggesting years of continued advancement and expanded influence within the industry. Even our personal relationship with Mike Thompson, our trusted mechanic, seemed to reflect the stability and mutual respect that characterized our approach to all professional relationships. David had discovered Thompson's auto repair through a coworker's recommendation, and Mike's honest pricing and reliable service had earned our loyalty over the past 3 years. The small shop's unpretentious atmosphere and Mike's straightforward communication style appealed to our preference for authentic interactions over flashy marketing presentations. Mike had proven himself trustworthy during several expensive repair situations, providing detailed explanations of necessary work and alternative options that helped us make informed decisions within our budget constraints. His wife Linda occasionally answered phones or handled scheduling when Mike was occupied with repairs, though our interactions with her remained minimal and focused on appointment logistics. Their small business embodied the entrepreneurial spirit that thrived throughout Austin's diverse economy, representing the kind of honest work ethic that sustained communities beyond the headline-grabbing tech sector. This network of professional relationships, personal connections, and community involvement created what felt like an unshakable foundation for continued growth and success. 5 years of consistent effort had positioned me exactly where strategic planning suggested I should be at this stage of my career. The corner office, the expanding responsibilities, the recognition from peers and supervisors all confirmed that methodical approach and dedicated effort produced predictable results in environments that valued merit and performance. But foundations, no matter how carefully constructed, remain vulnerable to forces that operate outside the systematic frameworks we create to manage risk and ensure success. Sometimes the greatest threats emerge from the most unexpected directions, carried by people whose motivations remain hidden beneath surfaces of casual interaction and seemingly benign connection. The stability I had worked so hard to achieve was about to be tested by circumstances I could never have anticipated, originating from a source so unlikely that even my most paranoid contingency planning had failed to account for its possibility. The first indication that something had shifted in my carefully ordered professional world came on a Monday morning in late September, when the familiar rhythm of my daily routine encountered an unexpected disruption that would prove to be the beginning of everything unraveling. I arrived at TechFlow Solutions at my customary 7:30, early enough to review weekend emails and prepare for the day's client calls before the office filled with colleagues and their accompanying distractions. The building's lobby appeared normal, with Marcus, our longtime security guard, offering his usual friendly greeting and updates about weekend activities. The elevator carried me smoothly to the third floor, where the familiar hum of computers and climate control systems created the ambient soundtrack of corporate productivity. Nothing in those initial moments suggested that fundamental changes were already in motion. Changes that would challenge everything I believed about fairness, merit, and the reliability of institutional systems designed to protect employee rights and professional integrity. As I approached my office, keycard ready to unlock the door I had passed through thousands of times over the past 5 years, I noticed something unusual. A small placard had been posted next to my nameplate, bearing the TechFlow Maintenance Department logo and what appeared to be an inspection notice. The official appearance of the document immediately triggered concern, though I initially assumed it related to routine facilities management rather than anything that would directly impact my daily operations or long-term tenure in the space. Reading the notice more carefully revealed language that seemed unnecessarily ominous for standard maintenance communication. The document referenced, quote, structural integrity concerns, and, quote, comprehensive evaluation requirements, using terminology typically associated with major renovations or safety issues, rather than routine inspections. No specific timeline was provided, nor were there instructions for how employees should respond to whatever process the notice intended to initiate. The absence of preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Clear information created an unsettling ambiguity that felt inconsistent with TechFlow's typically transparent communication standards. Inside my office, everything appeared exactly as I had left it Friday evening. My computer hummed quietly in sleep mode, while the carefully arranged documents on my desk awaited Monday morning review. The plants showed no signs of distress, and the morning sunlight streaming through the windows created the same inspiring atmosphere that had motivated countless productive hours over the years. Yet the notice outside had introduced an element of uncertainty that colored my perception of the familiar space, creating a subtle anxiety that persisted despite the absence of any visible problems or immediate concerns. A soft knock on my open door interrupted my contemplation of the mysterious maintenance notice. Emily Walsh, my administrative assistant, appeared in the doorway with her characteristic early morning efficiency, carrying a steaming coffee cup and the organized enthusiasm that made her such a valuable team member. Her expression, however, carried a hint of concern that immediately put me on alert, suggesting she had information that might explain the unusual documentation I had just discovered. "Good morning, Jessica," Emily said, her tone carefully measured in a way that indicated she was choosing her words deliberately. "I wanted to catch you before the staff meeting to mention something I heard Friday afternoon. There's apparently a new maintenance director starting today, and word is that she's planning some significant changes to the office layout and space allocation throughout the building. The information struck me as unusual for several reasons. Frank Rodriguez, our longtime maintenance director, had mentioned retirement plans during casual conversations, but his departure timeline had seemed flexible rather than immediate. More concerning was the suggestion that a new hire would arrive with predetermined plans for major changes, bypassing the collaborative planning process that typically characterized significant facilities decisions at TechFlow. The company culture emphasized stakeholder input and careful consideration of operational impacts before implementing changes that affected employee productivity and morale. Did Frank's replacement go through the normal hiring process? I asked, recognizing that the answer might explain the apparent lack of advanced communication about these supposed changes. I don't remember Jennifer mentioning anything about facilities reorganization during our last department head meeting. Emily's hesitation before responding confirmed my suspicion that unusual circumstances surrounded this appointment. That's the thing, she said, glancing around to ensure our conversation remained private. From what I heard, the hire was expedited through some kind of executive decision. Apparently, she has experience with large-scale facilities management and came highly recommended, so they bypassed the usual committee process to secure her services quickly. This explanation raised additional questions rather than providing reassurance. TechFlow's hiring practices, particularly for management positions, typically involved multiple interview rounds and input from various departments that would interact with the new employee. The systematic approach ensured cultural fit and comprehensive evaluation of qualifications before making offers for positions with significant operational impact. Expedited hiring usually occurred only for critical roles where immediate need outweighed the benefits of thorough vetting, situations that seemed unlikely to apply to facilities management in a stable company environment. The timing of this appointment, coinciding with the mysterious maintenance notice on my door, suggested a coordinated effort that implied advanced planning and specific targets for whatever changes were contemplated. The possibility that my office had been identified for modification before the new director even officially started her employment created a concerning impression of predetermined outcomes rather than objective evaluation of facilities' needs and optimization opportunities. As Emily departed to handle morning administrative tasks, I found myself examining my office with new scrutiny, attempting to identify potential issues that might justify structural integrity concerns or comprehensive evaluation requirements. The space had undergone routine maintenance over the years, with minor updates to technology infrastructure and periodic painting that kept everything current and professional. The furniture remained in excellent condition, the windows operated properly, and the climate control system maintained comfortable temperatures year-round without any apparent problems. The strategic location of the office, however, might represent a different kind of asset that could motivate someone to find justifications for relocating its current occupant. Corner offices with premium views commanded respect within corporate hierarchies, serving as visible symbols of achievement and status that carried psychological value beyond their functional benefits. If the new maintenance director harbored ambitions for personal office upgrades or had promised specific accommodations to other staff members, my space might represent an attractive target for redistribution under the guise of necessary renovations or safety improvements. This speculation felt uncomfortably cynical for someone who had always operated under the assumption that institutional systems protected employees from arbitrary decisions and personal vendettas. TechFlow's human resources policies explicitly addressed workplace fairness and due process for any changes affecting employee working conditions. Yet the cryptic maintenance notice and rumors of predetermined facilities changes suggested that normal protections might be circumvented through creative interpretations of administrative authority and maintenance requirements. The remainder of that Monday proceeded with an undercurrent of tension that affected my concentration and productivity in ways I struggled to manage effectively. Client calls required mental energy that felt divided between immediate responsibilities and concerns about potential disruptions to my working environment. Email communications demanded attention while part of my mind remained occupied with analyzing possible scenarios and developing contingency plans for various outcomes related to the facility's evaluation process. By late afternoon, curiosity and professional self-preservation had overcome my initial reluctance to investigate the situation more directly. Rather than waiting passively for whatever process the maintenance notice had initiated, I decided to introduce myself to the new maintenance director and attempt to gather information about her plans and timelines. Direct communication had always served me well in resolving workplace uncertainties, and this situation seemed to warrant proactive engagement rather than anxious speculation about unknown intentions and procedures. The maintenance department occupied basement-level offices that few employees visited regularly, creating a somewhat isolated environment removed from the collaborative atmosphere that characterized the main working areas. Frank Rodriguez had operated from a modest office that reflected his practical approach to facilities management, with functional furniture and walls covered by building schematics, maintenance schedules, and vendor contact information rather than decorative elements or personal memorabilia. Approaching the maintenance director's office, I could hear a confident female voice engaged in what sounded like a phone conversation with building contractors or renovation specialists. The tone carried an authority that suggested someone comfortable making significant decisions and issuing directives about complex projects. This impression aligned with Emily's information about experience with large-scale facilities management, though it also suggested an approach that might prioritize efficiency over collaboration in implementing whatever changes were under consideration. When the conversation concluded, I knocked gently on the partially open door and waited for permission to enter. The woman who looked up from behind Frank's former desk bore little resemblance to the practical, safety-focused maintenance director I had expected to encounter. Linda Thompson appeared to be in her early 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and makeup that seemed more appropriate for a corporate executive than someone overseeing building repairs and custodial services. Her clothing reinforced this impression, a tailored business suit that would have fit seamlessly into any client meeting or board presentation, accessorized with jewelry that suggested either significant personal wealth or strong preferences for projecting success and authority. The transformation of Frank's utilitarian office had already begun, with new furniture arrangements and decorative elements that created a more executive-style environment despite the basement location and industrial surroundings. "You must be Jessica Martinez," Linda said without waiting for introductions, her voice carrying a familiarity that seemed inappropriate given our lack of previous interaction. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. I understand you have some concerns about the facilities evaluation process we're implementing for optimal space utilization throughout the building." The phrasing of her response immediately put me on guard. I had made no inquiries about facilities evaluation processes, nor had I expressed concerns through any official channels. Her knowledge of my identity and apparent assumption about my motivations suggested either advanced research about specific employees or information sharing that exceeded what seemed necessary for routine administrative functions. The combination of premature familiarity and defensive positioning indicated someone prepared for conflict rather than collaborative problem-solving. "I noticed the inspection notice on my office door," I replied carefully, choosing neutral language to avoid escalating whatever tension already existed in the interaction. I wanted to introduce myself and understand what the evaluation process involves, particularly regarding timelines and potential impacts on daily operations. Linda's smile in response felt calculated rather than genuine, carrying an undercurrent of satisfaction that suggested she viewed this conversation as confirmation of expectations rather than an opportunity for productive communication. Her body language conveyed confidence and control, with posture and gestures that claimed authority over the situation and its outcomes regardless of my preferences or legitimate concerns about disruption to established working arrangements. "The evaluation process is quite comprehensive," she explained, opening a thick folder that appeared to contain detailed documentation about various office spaces throughout the building. "We're conducting structural integrity assessments, analyzing space utilization efficiency, and identifying opportunities for optimization that will better serve the company's evolving needs and growth projections." The folder's contents, visible from my position across her desk, included floor plans marked with colored annotations and what appeared to be priority rankings for different areas of the building. My corner office seemed to feature prominently in whatever system she was using to categorize spaces, with multiple colored markers that suggested either high priority for modification or significant issues requiring attention. The level of detail implied extensive advanced planning rather than preliminary evaluation of potential improvements. "Specifically regarding your current office allocation," Linda continued, consulting documents with theatrical precision, "our preliminary assessment has identified several concerns that will require immediate attention. The corner location presents unique structural challenges related to temperature regulation and window integrity, while the space allocation exceeds standard guidelines for your job classification level. Neither of these supposed issues had ever presented problems during my 5 years of occupancy. The corner location provided excellent natural light and comfortable temperatures year-round, while the space allocation had been specifically approved through the same human resources process that governed all office assignments based on role requirements and availability. Her characterization of legitimate benefits as problematic concerns suggested an agenda that prioritized reassignment over objective evaluation of actual facilities needs. I haven't experienced any temperature or window problems, I responded, maintaining professional composure despite growing suspicion about her motivations and methods. The space has been comfortable and functional for all my work requirements. Could you provide more specific information about these structural concerns and the evaluation criteria being used to assess job classification compliance? Linda's expression shifted slightly, revealing a flash of irritation that she quickly suppressed behind renewed professional courtesy. The momentary lapse suggested someone unaccustomed to having her assessments questioned, or her authority challenged through requests for detailed justification. Her recovery, however, demonstrated skill in managing potentially contentious interactions while maintaining control over the narrative and direction of the conversation. The evaluation criteria are based on industry standards for optimal workplace efficiency and safety compliance, she explained with increased formality. These standards take into account factors that may not be apparent to individual employees, but are essential for comprehensive facilities management and long-term operational sustainability. The response provided no actual information, while positioning my questions as evidence of limited understanding rather than legitimate requests for transparency about decisions affecting my working environment. This rhetorical strategy suggested someone skilled in deflecting scrutiny while maintaining an appearance of professional competence and appropriate authority. The combination of evasiveness and implied criticism felt deliberately designed to discourage further inquiry and establish her position as the sole arbiter of facilities-related decisions. Our conversation concluded with Linda's assurance that she would keep me informed about the evaluation timeline and any necessary next steps, though her tone suggested that my input would not significantly influence whatever process she had already set in motion. Walking back to my office, I found myself analyzing the interaction for clues about her true intentions and the scope of changes she might be planning. Nothing about the encounter had provided reassurance about fairness or transparency in whatever facilities reorganization was apparently underway. The remainder of that week proceeded with an atmosphere of uncertainty that affected not only my own productivity but also the morale of my entire team. Sarah Kim noticed my distraction during our strategy sessions, while Emily observed my increased tendency to review and secure important documents rather than leaving them accessible on my desk, as had been my previous practice. The change in routine reflected growing concerns about the security of my position and the potential for sudden disruptions that could affect both current projects and long-term planning efforts. By Friday afternoon, additional maintenance notices had appeared throughout the building, though the pattern of their distribution seemed arbitrary rather than systematic. Some offices received multiple notifications about different evaluation categories, while others showed no evidence of inspection activity, despite apparent similarities in layout, location, or occupancy patterns. The inconsistency suggested selective targeting rather than comprehensive facilities management, raising questions about the criteria being used to determine which spaces required attention and which remained undisturbed. The weekend provided temporary respite from workplace tensions, though conversations with David inevitably returned to my growing concerns about Linda Thompson's appointment and apparent agenda. His practical engineering perspective proved valuable in analyzing the situation objectively, helping me distinguish between legitimate professional concerns and anxiety-driven speculation about worst-case scenarios. Yet even his methodical approach to problem-solving could not fully address the fundamental uncertainty about motivations and intentions that remained hidden beneath professional facades and administrative procedures. Monday morning brought confirmation that my concerns were justified and that the evaluation process was proceeding toward predetermined conclusions rather than objective assessment of facilities' needs and employee requirements. Arriving at my customary early hour, I discovered a new notice posted prominently on my office door. This one bearing the bold heading, immediate structural remediation required, followed by language that seemed designed to create urgency and justify dramatic intervention rather than inform affected employees about legitimate safety concerns. The documentation attached to Monday morning's ominous notice contained technical language that seemed deliberately crafted to intimidate rather than inform. References to load-bearing structural compromise and immediate safety protocols suggested engineering assessments that would typically require weeks of professional evaluation and multiple expert opinions. Yet Linda Thompson appeared to have reached these conclusions through weekend review of building schematics and cursory visual inspection, demonstrating either remarkable expertise or predetermined intentions disguised as professional judgment. Reading through the attached remediation requirements revealed a scope of work that would essentially require complete office reconstruction. The proposed timeline demanded immediate relocation of all personal and professional materials, followed by comprehensive renovation that could extend for months depending on the extent of structural issues allegedly discovered during preliminary assessment. The financial implications alone should have triggered executive review and budget approval processes. Yet the documentation bore Linda's signature as sole authorizing authority for the entire project. The speed and certainty of these developments felt inconsistent with standard corporate procedures for major facilities modifications. TechFlow Solutions had always emphasized collaborative decision-making and stakeholder input for changes affecting employee productivity and departmental operations. Emergency situations certainly warranted expedited responses, but the absence of any apparent crisis beyond Linda's assertions raised questions about the legitimacy of the entire process and the motivations driving such dramatic intervention. Emily Walsh arrived shortly after my discovery of the latest notice, her expression reflecting the same confusion and concern that had been building throughout our department over the past week. Her usual Monday morning efficiency seemed subdued by uncertainty about how to proceed with normal administrative tasks when the fundamental stability of our working environment remained in question. The situation had progressed beyond mere inconvenience to active disruption of established routines and long-term planning efforts. "Jessica, I've been thinking about this situation over the weekend," Emily said, settling into one of my office chairs with unusual formality. "Something about the timeline and process feels wrong. I've worked here for 3 years, and I've never seen facilities changes implemented without department head consultation and advance notice for affected employees. This feels more like an emergency response to a crisis than routine building maintenance." Her observation aligned with my own growing suspicion that normal procedures were being bypassed through creative interpretation of administrative authority and maintenance protocols. The combination of urgency and secrecy suggested someone operating outside established systems while maintaining an appearance of legitimate authority. Yet challenging Linda's decisions would require evidence of procedural violations or a clear demonstration that her assessments were professionally unfounded, documentation that remained inaccessible to affected employees. Jennifer Hayes arrived for our scheduled Monday morning department meeting with visible tension that confirmed the situation had attracted attention at the management level. Her typically composed demeanor showed signs of strain that suggested weekend conversations with executives about unexpected facilities changes and their potential impact on departmental productivity. The marketing department's recent success made any disruption to our operations particularly concerning from a business continuity perspective. "Before we discuss this week's client campaigns," Jennifer began, closing the conference room door behind her with deliberate care, "I need to address the facilities situation that's developing. I've received inquiries from Robert Chen about major renovation projects that apparently weren't approved through normal channels. Linda Thompson has indicated that several offices require immediate attention for safety reasons, but the scope and timeline she's proposing seem excessive for routine maintenance." The revelation that executive leadership was equally surprised by these developments provided some reassurance that the situation hadn't been orchestrated at the highest levels of company management. However, it also confirmed that Linda was operating with significant autonomy and minimal oversight, potentially exploiting gaps in administrative structure that allowed maintenance directors substantial authority over building operations and employee workspace assignments. "Specifically," Jennifer continued, "your office has been identified for complete renovation due to alleged structural problems. I've asked for detailed engineering reports to justify the scope of work being proposed, but Linda claims that immediate action is required for safety compliance and liability protection. The executive team is reviewing the situation, but in the meantime, we need to prepare for potential temporary relocation of your operations. The phrase, potential temporary relocation, carried ominous implications that extended beyond inconvenience to fundamental questions about my standing within the company hierarchy and future career trajectory. Office assignments reflected status and achievement within corporate culture, and any change to my current space would be interpreted by colleagues and clients as either advancement or demotion, depending on the quality and location of alternative accommodations. Sarah Kim raised her hand with characteristic directness. This doesn't make sense from a project management perspective. Major structural work requires months of planning, contractor coordination, and budget allocation. If there were genuine safety concerns serious enough to require immediate action, we should have seen warning signs during routine inspections or employee reports of problems. Jessica's office has been functioning normally without any indication of structural issues. Her analytical assessment highlighted the logical inconsistencies that had been troubling me throughout the escalating situation. Legitimate engineering concerns would have manifested through observable symptoms, excessive moisture, temperature fluctuations, visible cracks, or operational problems that affected daily use of the space. The absence of any such indicators suggested either remarkably subtle structural problems or manufactured justifications for predetermined relocation decisions. Michael Davis contributed his perspective from previous experience with corporate relocations at his former employer. When my last company went through facilities reorganization, they provided detailed timelines, alternative workspace options, and compensation for employee inconvenience. The process took months of planning and included input from affected departments about operational requirements and space needs. This situation feels more like emergency damage control than strategic facilities management. The comparison reinforced my growing conviction that Linda's approach violated standard practices for managing major workplace changes. Professional facilities management emphasized minimizing disruption to business operations while ensuring employee satisfaction with transition processes and final outcomes. The current situation prioritized speed and authority over collaboration and transparency, suggesting motivations that extended beyond legitimate building maintenance and space optimization. Emily Walsh had been quietly reviewing the remediation notice during our discussion, her administrative experience providing insight into the documentation and approval processes that should govern such significant undertakings. I noticed that these work orders don't include the standard references to engineering consultations, environmental assessments, or executive approvals that usually accompany major renovation projects. The authorization signatures are limited to maintenance department personnel, which seems insufficient for the scope and cost of work being proposed. This administrative analysis provided concrete evidence that normal procedures were being circumvented through incomplete documentation and questionable approval processes. The absence of standard safeguards suggested either systematic oversight failures or deliberate attempts to avoid scrutiny that might reveal problems with the underlying justifications for the proposed work. Either explanation warranted immediate attention from human resources and executive management. Jennifer's expression reflected growing concern about the implications of these procedural irregularities. I'm going to escalate this to Angela Foster in Human Resources and request a formal review of the facility's modification process. Employees have rights regarding workplace changes, and those rights include adequate notice, consultation about alternatives, and protection from arbitrary decisions that affect their professional standing. The prospect of human resources intervention provided some hope for resolution through established corporate channels designed to protect employee interests and ensure fair treatment in workplace disputes. However, it also meant that the situation would likely escalate into formal conflict between departments, potentially affecting my professional relationships and reputation, regardless of the ultimate outcome. The complexity of navigating corporate politics while defending legitimate interests required careful strategy and diplomatic skill. Our department meeting concluded with assignment of temporary contingency plans that would allow continued operations regardless of how the facility's situation developed. Sarah Kim would prepare alternative workspace configurations that could accommodate my responsibilities if relocation became necessary, while Emily Walsh documented our current systems and client files to ensure seamless transitions in any scenario. Michael Davis agreed to research external office rental options that could provide temporary space if TechFlow's alternatives proved inadequate for our departmental needs. The afternoon brought an unexpected visit from Linda Thompson herself, accompanied by two men wearing contractor uniforms and carrying measuring equipment. Her arrival in my office space felt like an invasion, particularly given the absence of advance notice or invitation to observe whatever evaluation process they intended to conduct. The presumption of access to my workspace without coordination or permission reflected either poor professional courtesy or deliberate assertion of authority over my professional environment. Jessica, I wanted to personally oversee the detailed structural assessment that will determine the scope of remediation required for your office space, Linda announced with false courtesy that barely concealed satisfaction with her position of power over the situation. These are certified building inspectors who specialize in identifying hidden structural problems that pose risks to employee safety and company liability. The introduction of outside contractors suggested escalation beyond a simple maintenance department evaluation, though the timing raised questions about how quickly such specialized services could be arranged and deployed. Legitimate structural assessments typically required scheduling weeks in advance, particularly for inspectors with the credentials and insurance necessary to provide evaluations that would justify major renovation expenditures and workplace disruptions. Watching the contractors' work revealed techniques that seemed more theatrical than technical. Their measurements appeared cursory rather than comprehensive, while their discussions focused on aesthetic observations rather than engineering analysis. The inspection process lacked the systematic methodology that would typically characterize professional structural evaluation, suggesting either remarkable efficiency or performance designed to support predetermined conclusions rather than objective assessment of actual building conditions. One of the contractors, apparently designated as the senior inspector, approached my desk with a clipboard and serious expression that seemed calculated to convey authority and expertise. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that we've identified several areas of concern that require immediate attention. The corner location of this office creates unique stress patterns on the building framework, and the window installations appear to have allowed moisture infiltration that could compromise structural integrity over time." The explanation relied on technical terminology that sounded impressive to non-experts, while avoiding specific details that could be verified through independent analysis. References to stress patterns and moisture infiltration created an impression of scientific assessment without providing measurable data or concrete evidence that could support the dramatic remediation proposals Linda had already documented. The vagueness suggested either incomplete evaluation or deliberate obfuscation of actual findings. "Could you show me the specific areas where you've identified these problems?" I asked, recognizing that direct observation might reveal the validity of their assessments or expose the superficial nature of their inspection process. "I'd like to understand exactly what issues you're seeing so I can provide relevant information about the space's performance and any problems I may have noticed during daily use." The inspector's hesitation before responding confirmed my suspicion that their evaluation lacked the depth and precision that would characterize legitimate structural analysis. The problems we're identifying require specialized equipment and technical expertise to properly document. Our preliminary findings indicate enough concern to warrant comprehensive remediation, but the detailed analysis will be included in our formal report to the maintenance department. This deflection avoided demonstrating actual evidence while maintaining an appearance of professional competence and appropriate caution. The promise of detailed analysis and future documentation created distance between current assertions and eventual accountability for their accuracy. Meanwhile, the immediate impact of their preliminary findings would drive decision-making and resource allocation regardless of whether subsequent analysis supported their initial conclusions. Linda Thompson observed these interactions with visible satisfaction, her body language conveying confidence that the inspection process was proceeding according to plan and producing the results she had anticipated. Her positioning in my office suggested ownership rather than consultation, while her attention to the contractor's work appeared more focused on their adherence to script than their technical findings. The entire performance felt orchestrated rather than investigative. Based on these preliminary findings, Linda announced before the contractors had completed their evaluation, "I'm implementing immediate relocation protocols to ensure employee safety while we develop comprehensive remediation plans. Temporary workspace assignments will be coordinated through human resources, with priority given to maintaining operational continuity during the transition period." The speed of this decision, announced before the inspection was complete, confirmed that relocation had been predetermined rather than dependent on actual assessment results. The reference to human resources coordination suggested an attempt to legitimize the process through established administrative channels, though the timeline and lack of consultation with affected departments violated standard procedures for managing workplace changes that affected employee productivity and satisfaction. My request to participate in selecting alternative workspace options was dismissed with the explanation that facilities management required control over space allocation to ensure optimal building utilization and safety compliance. This exclusion from decisions affecting my daily working environment represented a significant departure from TechFlow's collaborative culture and employee-centered approach to workplace management. The authoritarian nature of Linda's approach felt inconsistent with company values and suspicious in its urgency and inflexibility. The contractors departed with promises to deliver formal documentation within 48 hours, though their hasty exit and minimal equipment suggested that comprehensive analysis had not actually occurred. The brevity of their inspection contrasted sharply with the dramatic conclusions being drawn about structural integrity and safety requirements. Either the problems were remarkably obvious to experienced professionals, or the evaluation had been superficial and designed to support predetermined conclusions rather than objective assessment of building conditions. That evening's conversation with David revealed additional dimensions of the situation that had not been apparent during my focus on workplace procedures and professional implications. His practical perspective on building maintenance and structural issues provided technical insight that challenged the contractor's assertions and raised questions about the competence or honesty of their evaluation process. Corner offices in modern buildings like TechFlow don't typically experience the stress pattern problems they described, David explained, drawing on his engineering background and experience with commercial construction standards. The structural design of that building incorporates specific reinforcement for corner loads, and moisture infiltration around windows would be visible through staining, warping, or climate control problems that you would have noticed over 5 years of daily use. His analysis suggested that either the contractors lacked the expertise they claimed to possess, or their evaluation had been deliberately misleading to support conclusions that served purposes beyond legitimate building maintenance. The technical implausibility of their findings provided grounds for challenging their recommendations, though proving professional incompetence or intentional deception would require independent expert analysis that might be difficult to arrange given the speed of Linda's implementation timeline. More concerning, David continued, is the fact that a new maintenance director would have access to building contractors and structural inspectors on such short notice. Those kinds of professional relationships typically develop over months or years of working in local facilities management. Either Linda Thompson has extensive Austin area experience that wasn't mentioned during her hiring, or she came to this position with predetermined plans and prearranged resources. This observation opened new questions about Linda's background, qualifications, and the circumstances of her hiring that had seemed unusual from the beginning. Her apparent preparedness to implement major changes immediately upon assuming her position suggested advance planning that exceeded what would be reasonable for a new employee responding to emerging building maintenance needs. The level of organization and resource coordination implied either remarkable efficiency or premeditated agenda that extended beyond routine facilities management responsibilities. Wednesday morning brought the promised formal documentation from the structural assessment, though the report's content confirmed rather than alleviated concerns about the evaluation's legitimacy and thoroughness. The document contained impressive technical language and official formatting, but careful reading revealed generalizations and assumptions rather than specific measurements, test results, or comparative analysis that would support the dramatic conclusions and expensive remediation proposals being recommended. Photographs included in the report showed areas of my office that appeared entirely normal, with arrows and annotations pointing to supposed problems that were invisible to untrained observation. References to microfractures and subsurface moisture indicators suggested sophisticated detection methods, yet no data from specialized equipment or quantitative measurements supported these claims. The disconnect between technical language and actual evidence suggested documentation designed to impress rather than inform, creating an appearance of scientific analysis without substantial supporting evidence. Jennifer Hayes reviewed the report with growing skepticism that reflected her own experience with legitimate facilities management and building maintenance procedures. This reads more like a creative writing exercise than an engineering evaluation, she observed during our discussion of the document's contents. Professional structural assessments include specific measurements, comparative standards, and detailed recommendations with cost estimates and timeline projections. This report makes dramatic claims without providing the data that would typically support such conclusions. Her assessment reinforced my own impression that the entire evaluation process had been designed to create justification for predetermined decisions, rather than objective analysis of actual building conditions. The combination of impressive presentation and superficial content suggested someone skilled in manipulation and familiar with corporate decision-making processes, but lacking the technical competence or professional integrity to conduct legitimate facilities management. The report's recommendations included immediate relocation, followed by complete office reconstruction involving structural reinforcement, window replacement, and environmental remediation that would require months of work and substantial financial investment. The scope of proposed changes seemed grossly disproportionate to the vague problems allegedly identified, particularly given the absence of observable symptoms or employee complaints that would typically accompany serious building maintenance issues. Angela Foster from Human Resources requested a meeting to discuss the facility's situation and its implications for employee rights and company policies regarding workplace changes. Her involvement represented the formal intervention Jennifer had promised, though the complexity of the situation and Linda's apparent authority over building operations created challenges for addressing the procedural irregularities and questionable assessments that had driven recent developments. Employee workspace assignments fall under the jurisdiction of facilities management, Angela explained during our conference room discussion, but employees have rights regarding advance notice, consultation about alternatives, and protection from arbitrary decisions that affect their working conditions. The timeline and process Linda Thompson has implemented raise concerns about compliance with our established procedures for managing workplace changes. Her acknowledgement of procedural problems provided validation for my concerns about the legitimacy of Linda's approach, though the division of authority between human resources and facilities management created potential for conflicting interpretations of company policy and individual employee rights. The situation required careful navigation of corporate hierarchy and competing departmental interests, while protecting my professional standing and work environment. I'm particularly concerned about the speed and scope of changes being proposed, Angela continued. Major facilities modifications typically require executive approval, budget authorization, and coordination with affected departments to minimize disruption to business operations. The documentation provided by the maintenance department lacks the standard approvals and impact assessments that should accompany such significant undertakings. This confirmation that normal procedures had been bypassed provided grounds for formal challenge to Linda's authority and the legitimacy of her proposed changes. However, it also suggested that the situation had exposed gaps in corporate oversight and administrative accountability that might require systemic changes to prevent similar problems in the future. The immediate challenge remained protecting my interests while contributing to broader improvements in company policies and procedures. Thursday brought an escalation that transformed workplace inconvenience into personal crisis when Linda Thompson announced that my office relocation would occur the following Monday, providing minimal time for coordination of client communications, file transfers, and arrangement of alternative workspace that could support continued productivity. The compressed timeline seemed designed to prevent organized resistance or detailed evaluation of alternative solutions that might expose the unnecessary nature of the proposed changes. The designated alternative workspace proved to be a small interior office with no windows, limited storage capacity, and location near high-traffic areas that would compromise the confidentiality and professional atmosphere required for client consultations and strategic planning sessions. The downgrade from corner office with premium amenities to basic interior space represented a significant reduction in both practical functionality and symbolic status within the corporate hierarchy. This is temporary accommodation while your permanent office undergoes necessary remediation, Linda explained with false reassurance that failed to address the fundamental problems with the proposed arrangement. Once the structural work is completed, you'll be able to return to an improved workspace that meets all safety and efficiency standards. The promise of eventual return to improved facilities rang hollow given the absence of specific timeline commitments or guarantees about the scope and quality of renovation work being planned. The vagueness of restoration promises, combined with the immediate reality of dramatically reduced workspace, created strong incentives to accept whatever arrangements Linda proposed, rather than risk further deterioration of professional accommodations and standing. Sarah Kim's analysis of the proposed temporary space revealed additional problems that would affect not only my individual productivity, but also our department's ability to maintain client service standards and collaborative work processes. The interior location eliminates natural light that's essential for extended computer work, while the proximity to break rooms and copy stations will create constant interruptions that make confidential client communications difficult or impossible. Her practical assessment highlighted the broader implications of Linda's decisions for departmental operations and client relationships that had been carefully developed over years of consistent service and professional excellence. The facility's changes threatened to undermine established business processes and reputation factors that extended far beyond individual employee convenience or preference. Emily Walsh had been researching company policies regarding employee rights during workplace modifications, discovering provisions that seemed to support resistance to arbitrary changes that significantly affected working conditions without adequate justification or consultation. The employee handbook includes specific protections against unreasonable workplace changes that interfere with job performance or create hostile working environments. Linda's timeline and the quality of alternative space being offered may violate these established rights. This policy research provided additional grounds for formal challenge to Linda's authority and the legitimacy of her proposed changes, though pursuing such challenges would require escalating the situation to higher levels of corporate management with potential consequences for professional relationships and future career advancement. The decision to fight or accommodate required careful consideration of short-term disruption versus long-term implications for professional standing and departmental stability. Friday afternoon brought an unexpected encounter that would begin to reveal the true nature of Linda Thompson's motivations and the personal connections that had influenced her appointment to a position of authority over my professional environment. David's casual mention of our car repair appointment at Thompson's Auto Repair created the first link between my workplace crisis and the seemingly unrelated network of service providers and personal relationships that formed the background infrastructure of our daily lives in Austin. Mike mentioned that his wife Linda just started a new job with some big tech company, David reported during his Friday evening account of the day's activities. Apparently, she's already making significant changes and improvements to their building operations. He seemed proud of her success and the recognition she's receiving for her facilities management expertise. The information struck me with immediate recognition and growing alarm, as the implications became clear. Linda Thompson, the maintenance director who had been systematically dismantling my professional environment, was married to Mike Thompson, the mechanic who had serviced our vehicles and earned our trust over 3 years of honest business dealings. The personal connection explained her access to information about my employment, and possibly my value within the company hierarchy that had informed her targeting decisions. The coincidence felt too significant to be accidental, suggesting that Linda's appointment to TechFlow Solutions and her immediate focus on my office space had been influenced by knowledge gained through her husband's business relationship with David and me. The violation of trust represented by this exploitation of personal information for professional purposes created a new dimension of betrayal that extended beyond workplace politics to the fundamental relationships and community connections that sustained daily life in Austin. David's confusion about my reaction gradually gave way to understanding as I explained the connection between his trusted mechanic's wife and the facility's director who had been disrupting my career and threatening my professional standing. The realization that their family had been discussing our personal and professional circumstances during casual conversations about automotive service created a disturbing picture of privacy invasion and strategic manipulation disguised as coincidental professional decisions. This explains the timing and specificity of her targeting, David observed, with growing anger about the violation of trust and professional boundaries that the situation represented. She didn't arrive at TechFlow with general facilities management plans. She came with specific knowledge about your success and office location that could only have been obtained through our personal business relationship with her husband. The personal nature of Linda's motivation transformed the situation from workplace inconvenience to deliberate attack on my professional achievements and reputation within the company. The systematic approach to undermining my position suggested premeditation and careful planning, rather than coincidental conflicts between strong personalities or different management philosophies. The revelation demanded reconsideration of every interaction and decision, in light of hidden personal agendas and deceptive motivations. Weekend reflection on these developments revealed the full scope of Linda Thompson's apparent strategy for gaining influence within TechFlow Solutions, while simultaneously targeting the professional standing of someone whose success may have triggered resentment or competitive feelings that motivated revenge disguised as legitimate facilities management. The sophistication of her approach suggested experience with corporate manipulation and institutional systems that could be exploited for personal purposes. Monday morning arrived with the surreal atmosphere of watching a carefully constructed professional life being dismantled by forces that operated beyond normal institutional safeguards and reasonable expectations of workplace fairness. The weekend's revelation about Linda Thompson's personal connection to our family through her husband's auto repair business had reframed every interaction and decision as part of a calculated campaign rather than legitimate facilities management. The transformation from inconvenience to targeted harassment demanded strategic response that could expose her motivations while protecting my professional reputation and career prospects. Emily Walsh arrived early to assist with the forced relocation process, her administrative efficiency now directed toward damage control and preservation of essential business functions during a transition that served no legitimate operational purpose. Her documentation of our current systems and client files had evolved into comprehensive backup procedures designed to maintain service quality, regardless of whatever disruptions Linda's agenda might create. The systematic approach to protecting departmental capabilities reflected our shared recognition that normal institutional protections had failed to prevent arbitrary exercise of administrative authority. The moving crew that Linda had arranged consisted of temporary workers rather than professional office relocation specialists. Their casual approach to handling sensitive documents and expensive equipment, creating additional anxiety about potential damage or loss of materials essential for ongoing client relationships. The absence of proper packing materials and protective procedures suggested either cost-cutting measures inappropriate for corporate relocations or deliberate indifference to the value and importance of items being transferred from my established workspace. Watching strangers handle 5 years of accumulated professional materials, filing systems that supported million-dollar client accounts, awards that represented career achievements, personal items that made long working hours tolerable, felt like observing the erasure of professional identity and institutional memory. The speed and casualness of the process prevented careful oversight of what was being moved, what might be damaged, and what could potentially disappear during the chaotic transfer between locations, separated by significant distance within the building. Jennifer Hayes arrived to oversee the relocation from a management perspective, her presence intended to ensure that departmental interests were protected during a process that had been imposed without adequate consultation or planning. Her visible frustration with the situation's development reflected broader concerns about precedent being established for arbitrary changes to employee working conditions and the potential impact on departmental morale and productivity that could affect overall business performance. "This is completely unacceptable from a business continuity standpoint," Jennifer observed while watching the disorganized packing process. "Client confidentiality requires secure handling of sensitive documents, and our service standards demand reliable access to reference materials and project files. This improvised approach to relocating essential business functions creates risks that extend far beyond individual employee inconvenience." Her criticism of the process provided professional validation for concerns that transcended personal preferences about office amenities and status symbols. The legitimate business implications of Linda's decisions offered grounds for escalating the situation through operational channels that might prove more effective than human resources procedures in reversing arbitrary facilities management decisions that threatened client relationships and revenue generation. Linda Thompson made a strategic appearance during the height of the moving chaos, her timing calculated to demonstrate authority over the process, while avoiding extended interaction that might reveal inconsistencies in her justifications or expose the personal motivations driving her decisions. Her professional demeanor and management-appropriate attire created an impression of competent oversight, while her actual contributions to resolving logistical problems remained minimal and superficial. I want to personally ensure that this transition proceeds smoothly and that all your professional needs are accommodated in the temporary workspace, Linda announced with false concern that fooled no one familiar with the situation's actual development. The remediation work on your former office will begin immediately, and I'm confident that the improved facilities will exceed your previous accommodations in both functionality and aesthetic appeal. The promise of eventual improvement rang hollow given the absence of specific timelines, detailed renovation plans, or budget allocations that would support comprehensive reconstruction of office space. The vagueness of future commitments, combined with the immediate reality of dramatically reduced working conditions, suggested that temporary arrangements might become permanent through institutional inertia and administrative convenience, rather than genuine intention to provide adequate restoration. The designated temporary office revealed the full extent of Linda's intentions to undermine my professional standing and operational effectiveness within the company. The windowless interior space measured approximately half the square footage of my former corner office, with fluorescent lighting that created harsh shadows and eye strain during extended computer work. The location near break rooms and copy stations generated constant foot traffic and noise levels that made confidential client communications difficult and strategic planning sessions virtually impossible. Storage capacity proved woefully inadequate for the reference materials, client files, and project documentation that supported effective performance of my marketing coordination responsibilities. Essential resources would need to remain in temporary boxes or remote storage locations, creating delays and inefficiencies that would affect client service quality and departmental productivity. The systematic degradation of working conditions seemed designed to create performance problems that could justify further negative actions or reduced confidence in my professional capabilities. Sarah Kim's inspection of the workspace confirmed that normal collaborative activities between team members would be severely compromised by the space limitations and disruptive environment. Strategy sessions that required whiteboard work and document review would need to be conducted in conference rooms that required advance booking and offered limited availability during peak business hours. The fragmentation of team activities threatened the efficient coordination that had made our department particularly successful in managing complex client campaigns and tight project deadlines. This arrangement will require fundamental changes to how we conduct client meetings and internal planning sessions, Sarah observed, while attempting to identify workable configurations for essential furniture and equipment. The acoustics make confidential conversations impossible, while the lighting creates problems for presentation materials and extended document review. These aren't minor inconveniences, they're operational barriers that will affect our ability to maintain service standards. Her technical analysis provided concrete evidence that Linda's workspace assignment created substantial obstacles to effective job performance, rather than temporary inconvenience that could be managed through minor adjustments and accommodation. The systematic degradation of working conditions established a pattern that could support constructive dismissal claims or hostile workplace environment complaints if the situation continued without resolution or adequate alternative arrangements. Emily Walsh's efforts to establish functional office systems in the reduced space revealed additional problems that would affect daily operations and client relationships. The absence of secure storage for confidential documents violated company policies regarding information security, while the limited technological infrastructure couldn't support the communication systems and data access requirements essential for effective marketing coordination activities. I've contacted IT support about network access and phone system configuration, Emily reported while struggling to arrange essential equipment in the cramped quarters. Apparently, the temporary space wasn't designed to support senior staff operations, and significant upgrades will be required to provide the technological capabilities you need for client communications and project management. The revelation that additional infrastructure investments would be necessary to make the temporary space functional for professional activities exposed the short-sighted and punitive nature of Linda's relocation decisions. Rather than identifying adequate alternative accommodations that could support continued productivity during legitimate renovation work, she had selected space that would require expensive modifications to achieve basic operational capability. The first client call from the new location confirmed the workspace's inadequacy for maintaining professional standards and service quality that had characterized my previous performance. Background noise from adjacent break room activities created distractions that made concentrated conversation difficult, while the absence of proper document storage meant that essential reference materials remained inaccessible during discussions that required immediate access to campaign data and performance metrics. Michael Davis attempted to compensate for the disrupted working environment by offering to handle client communications that required confidential discussion or complex document review. His willingness to assume additional responsibilities reflected team loyalty and professional solidarity, but also highlighted the systematic nature of Linda's attack on my operational effectiveness and professional reputation within the company. We can rearrange task assignments to minimize the impact of your workspace limitations, Michael suggested during an impromptu planning session in the hallway outside my temporary office. Client meetings can be scheduled in conference rooms, while document preparation work can be handled from locations with better storage access and technological infrastructure. The proposed accommodations represented generous colleague support and creative problem-solving, but they also demonstrated that Linda's decisions had created operational inefficiencies that affected entire departmental workflows rather than simply inconveniencing one employee. The systematic disruption of established business processes provided additional evidence that her actions served personal agendas rather than legitimate facilities management objectives. Jennifer Hayes scheduled an emergency meeting with Angela Foster from Human Resources to address the escalating situation and its implications for departmental productivity and employee welfare. The combination of procedural violations, questionable technical assessments, and operational disruptions had created a comprehensive case for institutional intervention and corrective action that could reverse Linda's arbitrary decisions. The workspace assignment violates multiple company policies regarding employee working conditions, information security, and operational efficiency, Jennifer documented during the meeting preparation. These aren't preference issues or minor inconveniences. They're substantial barriers to effective job performance that affect client relationships and revenue generation. Her systematic analysis of policy violations provided the foundation for formal challenges to Linda's authority and the legitimacy of her facilities management decisions. The combination of procedural irregularities and operational impacts created multiple avenues for institutional intervention that could restore appropriate working conditions while establishing precedents to prevent similar arbitrary exercises of administrative power. Angela Foster's review of the situation revealed additional concerns about Linda Thompson's hiring process and the scope of authority she had been granted without adequate oversight or accountability mechanisms. The expedited appointment had bypassed normal background checks and reference verification procedures that might have revealed her lack of relevant experience or identified potential conflicts of interest that could affect her professional judgment. The facilities director position includes significant discretionary authority over building operations and employee workspace assignments, Angela explained during the conference room discussion. However, that authority is intended to be exercised within established procedures and with appropriate consultation regarding major changes that affect employee working conditions and departmental operations. Her acknowledgement that Linda's approach had exceeded normal boundaries of facilities management authority provided institutional support for challenging specific decisions while establishing broader principles for appropriate exercise of administrative power. The situation had exposed gaps in corporate oversight that required systemic changes to prevent future abuse of authority and protect employee rights during facilities modifications. The investigation into Linda's background and qualifications revealed inconsistencies in her professional history that raised questions about the accuracy of information provided during the hiring process. Her claimed experience with large-scale facilities management appeared to be exaggerated or misrepresented, while references from previous employers proved difficult to verify through normal contact procedures. The pattern of questionable credentials and unverifiable claims suggested either systematic deception during the application process or negligent background verification by hiring managers. Robert Chen, the company's CEO, requested a comprehensive briefing about the facility's management situation and its impact on business operations and employee satisfaction. His direct involvement represented escalation to the highest levels of corporate leadership and suggested recognition that the situation had progressed beyond routine administrative matters to fundamental questions about institutional integrity and leadership accountability. Facilities management decisions should support business objectives and employee productivity rather than creating unnecessary disruption and operational inefficiency, Robert emphasized during the executive briefing. The timeline and scope of changes being implemented raise concerns about judgment and priorities that need immediate evaluation and potential corrective action. His criticism of Linda's approach provided executive-level validation for concerns that had been building throughout the escalating crisis. The combination of CEO attention and human resources involvement suggested that normal institutional protections were finally engaging to address arbitrary exercise of administrative authority and restore appropriate workplace conditions. The formal investigation into Linda's facilities management decisions uncovered additional evidence of procedural violations and questionable assessments that had driven the campaign against my office space and professional standing. The structural inspection report that had justified immediate relocation proved to contain misrepresentations and unsupported conclusions that violated professional standards for building evaluation and engineering analysis. Independent contractors brought in to verify the alleged structural problems found no evidence of the issues described in Linda's documentation. The corner office showed normal wear patterns consistent with 5 years of professional use, while the windows and climate control systems operated within acceptable parameters for commercial office buildings. The absence of substantive problems confirmed that the entire remediation project had been based on manufactured justifications rather than legitimate maintenance needs. The original inspection report contains technical claims that aren't supported by measurable evidence or standard evaluation procedures, the independent contractor explained during his presentation to company leadership. The alleged structural problems would have required specialized equipment and detailed analysis to identify, yet the documentation suggests conclusions were reached through visual inspection and assumption rather than comprehensive engineering assessment. This professional refutation of Linda's technical claims provided definitive evidence that her facilities management decisions had been based on false premises and deliberate misrepresentation rather than legitimate building maintenance concerns. The systematic nature of the deception suggested calculated intent to create justification for predetermined actions, rather than objective evaluation of actual conditions. The revelation of Linda's deceptive practices prompted broader investigation into her hiring process and the circumstances that had led to her appointment without adequate background verification or oversight mechanisms. The expedited hiring that had bypassed normal procedures appeared to have been facilitated through personal connections and recommendations that weren't properly evaluated for accuracy or potential conflicts of interest. David's investigation into the Thompson family background revealed additional information that explained Linda's knowledge of my professional success and her access to personal details that had informed her targeting strategy. Mike Thompson's auto repair business served numerous TechFlow employees, creating opportunities to gather information about company personnel and office assignments through casual conversation during routine automotive service appointments. Linda had been collecting information about TechFlow employees for months before applying for the maintenance director position, David discovered through conversations with other mechanics in the local automotive service community. Mike's business relationship with tech workers provided detailed intelligence about individual employees, their professional standing, and workplace locations that informed her strategic planning. This revelation exposed the premeditated nature of Linda's campaign and the systematic violation of privacy and trust that had enabled her targeting of specific employees based on personal information obtained through unrelated business relationships. The abuse of community connections and professional service relationships represented a fundamental breach of social contracts that sustained local business networks and personal relationships. The combination of institutional investigation and independent contractor verification created overwhelming evidence that Linda Thompson had engaged in systematic deception and abuse of administrative authority to pursue personal agendas rather than legitimate facilities management objectives. The documented pattern of procedural violations, false technical claims, and privacy violations provided grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action to address the damages created by her arbitrary decisions. Thursday brought Linda's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain control over the situation, as institutional investigations revealed the extent of her deception and the absence of legitimate justification for her facilities management decisions. Her meetings with contractors and vendors became more frequent and secretive, suggesting efforts to create retroactive evidence that could support her original claims about building problems and renovation requirements. The discovery of Linda's attempts to manufacture supporting evidence for her false technical assessments provided additional proof of conscious deception and systematic fraud, rather than professional incompetence or honest mistakes in facilities evaluation. Her actions had progressed beyond administrative overreach to potential criminal behavior that threatened company assets and employee welfare through deliberate misrepresentation and resource misallocation. Emily Walsh's documentation of Linda's interactions with outside contractors revealed patterns of communication that suggested coordination between her false assessments and vendor proposals for expensive renovation work that would benefit their businesses regardless of actual building maintenance needs. The potential financial fraud implications elevated the situation beyond internal personnel matters to legal issues that required immediate executive intervention and possible law enforcement involvement. The timeline and coordination between Linda's inspection reports and contractor proposals suggests a systematic scheme to generate unnecessary renovation work that would benefit outside vendors while disrupting company operations, Emily reported during the ongoing investigation. The financial implications could be substantial if these fraudulent projects had been allowed to proceed based on false technical assessments. Her analysis revealed the full scope of Linda's apparent intentions to exploit her administrative position for personal gain while simultaneously targeting specific employees who had achieved professional success that triggered her resentment and competitive hostility. The combination of financial fraud and workplace harassment represented multiple violations of law and company policy that demanded comprehensive response and corrective action. Friday morning brought Linda's final desperate gambit to salvage her position and avoid accountability for the systematic deception and abuse of authority that had characterized her brief tenure as facilities director. Her announcement of additional emergency structural problems throughout the building represented an escalation that threatened to disrupt operations for multiple departments while generating massive renovation contracts for her associated vendors. The transparent desperation of Linda's final maneuvers provided clear evidence of consciousness of guilt and recognition that her original scheme had been exposed through institutional investigation and independent verification. Her attempts to expand the scope of false technical claims suggested panic rather than confidence in her professional assessments and administrative authority. Jennifer Hayes's coordination with human resources and executive leadership ensured that Linda's escalating attempts to create additional disruption were immediately challenged through proper administrative channels and independent contractor verification. The institutional response demonstrated that normal corporate protections were finally functioning effectively to prevent further abuse of authority and protect employee welfare from arbitrary administrative decisions. The systematic exposure of Linda Thompson's deception and the institutional response to her abuse of administrative authority represented not only personal vindication, but also broader validation of the importance of procedural safeguards and accountability mechanisms in protecting employee rights and corporate integrity. The situation had tested the effectiveness of institutional protections while revealing both vulnerabilities in oversight systems and the ultimate strength of collaborative response to systematic abuse of power and trust. The company-wide emergency meeting that Robert Chen called for Monday morning carried the weight of institutional reckoning and corporate accountability that had been building throughout the systematic exposure of Linda Thompson's fraudulent activities and abuse of administrative authority. The executive conference room filled with department heads, human resources personnel, and key staff members, whose professional lives had been affected by decisions that violated both company policy and basic standards of workplace fairness and operational integrity. Robert Chen's opening remarks established the gravity of the situation and the comprehensive nature of institutional response that would address not only immediate corrective measures, but also systemic improvements to prevent similar abuse of authority and deception in future administrative appointments and facilities management decisions. His tone reflected both anger about the violations that had occurred and determination to restore employee confidence in corporate leadership and institutional protections. The investigation into recent facilities management decisions has revealed systematic deception, abuse of administrative authority, and potential financial fraud that violated company policies, employee rights, and basic standards of professional conduct, Robert announced with the measured precision that characterized his approach to serious business crises. These violations require immediate corrective action and comprehensive policy improvements to ensure that such abuse of trust and authority cannot occur again. His acknowledgement of institutional failures provided validation for employees who had experienced arbitrary treatment, while establishing executive commitment to substantive changes that would strengthen oversight mechanisms and accountability standards. The combination of immediate correction and long-term prevention demonstrated leadership recognition that the situation had exposed fundamental weaknesses in corporate governance that required comprehensive response. Angela Foster presented the findings of the Human Resources investigation, documenting the procedural violations and policy breaches that had enabled Linda Thompson's systematic targeting of specific employees and her exploitation of administrative systems for personal agendas rather than legitimate business purposes. The detailed analysis revealed gaps in background verification, inadequate oversight of facilities management authority, and insufficient safeguards against arbitrary exercise of administrative power. The expedited hiring process bypassed essential background checks and reference verification procedures that would have revealed inconsistencies in professional credentials and potential conflicts of interest, Angela reported, with professional precision that nevertheless conveyed institutional embarrassment about oversight failures. Additionally, the scope of authority granted to facilities management lacked adequate checks and balances to prevent arbitrary decisions that significantly affect employee working conditions and departmental operations. Her systematic analysis of institutional failures provided the foundation for comprehensive policy reforms that would address both immediate vulnerabilities and broader questions about corporate governance and employee protection mechanisms. The honest assessment of systemic weaknesses demonstrated institutional maturity and commitment to learning from crisis, rather than minimizing responsibility or deflecting accountability for leadership decisions. The independent contractor who had refuted Linda's false technical assessments presented his detailed analysis of the alleged structural problems that had justified immediate office relocations and expensive renovation projects. His professional credentials and systematic evaluation methodology provided authoritative evidence that completely contradicted the manufactured justifications for Linda's arbitrary facilities management decisions. Comprehensive structural analysis using appropriate engineering techniques and specialized equipment found no evidence of the problems described in the original inspection reports, the contractor explained while displaying detailed measurements and photographic documentation. The alleged stress patterns, moisture infiltration, and structural integrity concerns simply do not exist based on objective evaluation using industry standard assessment procedures. His presentation provided definitive proof that Linda's technical claims had been entirely fabricated to create justification for predetermined actions rather than objective evaluation of actual building conditions. The systematic nature of the deception confirmed that her facilities management decisions had been driven by personal agendas and potential financial fraud rather than legitimate maintenance needs or safety concerns. Jennifer Hayes presented the operational impact analysis that documented how Linda's arbitrary decisions had affected departmental productivity, client relationships, and revenue generation through unnecessary disruption of established business processes and degradation of essential working conditions. The comprehensive assessment revealed substantial costs that extended far beyond individual employee inconvenience to measurable business impacts that affected company performance and market reputation. The forced relocations and workspace downgrades created operational inefficiencies that reduced departmental productivity by an estimated 25%, while compromising client service standards that had been carefully developed over years of consistent performance. Jennifer reported with data-driven precision that quantified the business consequences of Linda's abuse of authority. These disruptions affected not only individual employees but entire departmental workflows and client relationships that represent substantial revenue streams and long-term business value. Her analysis provided concrete evidence that Linda's actions had created significant financial damages that justified both immediate corrective measures and potential legal action to recover costs associated with unnecessary relocations, reduced productivity, and compromised client relationships. The business impact documentation elevated the situation beyond personnel matters to fundamental questions about corporate asset protection and operational integrity. The revelation that Linda Thompson had been terminated immediately upon discovery of her systematic deception and fraud brought relief tinged with recognition that institutional protections had ultimately functioned effectively, despite initial failures in hiring procedures and oversight mechanisms. Her removal from the company eliminated the immediate threat while creating opportunities for comprehensive correction of the damages she had inflicted through arbitrary exercise of administrative authority. Robert Chen's announcement of my immediate restoration to the corner office, along with comprehensive compensation for the disruptions and professional damages caused by Linda's arbitrary decisions, represented both personal vindication and institutional acknowledgement of the serious violations that had occurred. The combination of workspace restoration and financial compensation demonstrated corporate commitment to making affected employees whole, while establishing precedents for addressing similar situations in the future. Jessica Martinez will be immediately restored to her original office space with comprehensive reimbursement for expenses related to the unnecessary relocation and compensation for professional disruptions that affected her ability to perform her duties effectively. Robert announced with emphasis that established corporate responsibility for ensuring employee welfare and protection against arbitrary administrative decisions. Additionally, the company will implement enhanced oversight mechanisms to prevent similar abuse of facilities management authority. The public acknowledgement of wrongdoing and commitment to comprehensive correction provided validation for the systematic resistance I had maintained throughout the escalating crisis. The combination of personal restoration and institutional reform demonstrated that principled opposition to arbitrary authority could ultimately succeed when supported by colleagues, management, and investigative processes that revealed the truth about deceptive practices and abuse of power. Sarah Kim's relief about the resolution was evident as she helped coordinate the restoration of normal departmental operations and the return of essential materials and equipment to properly functional workspace arrangements. Her loyalty and professional support throughout the crisis had been instrumental in maintaining operational effectiveness despite the systematic disruptions that Linda's decisions had created. Finally, we can get back to normal client service and strategic planning without the constant stress of inadequate workspace and operational barriers, Sarah observed while overseeing the efficient restoration of office systems and collaborative work processes. The temporary arrangements had started affecting our ability to maintain the service standards that distinguish our department and support our professional reputation. Her practical assessment reflected the broader relief felt throughout the department, as normal working conditions were restored, and the arbitrary disruptions that had threatened professional effectiveness were eliminated through institutional intervention and comprehensive corrective action. The return to established routines and adequate workspace represented more than convenience. It restored the foundation for continued professional growth and achievement. Emily Walsh's administrative efficiency proved invaluable in coordinating the complex logistics of restoring office systems, client files, and technological infrastructure that had been disrupted by Linda's arbitrary relocation decisions. Her detailed documentation of the transition process would provide valuable reference information for preventing similar disruptions and ensuring more effective institutional response to future facilities management issues. I've prepared comprehensive documentation of the entire process from initial disruption through final restoration, Emily reported, while organizing the systematic return of materials and equipment to their original configurations. This information will be valuable for policy development and staff training to ensure that facilities management authority is exercised within appropriate boundaries and with adequate oversight. Her forward-thinking approach to learning from crisis demonstrated the kind of professional maturity and systematic thinking that had characterized our department's response throughout the challenging period. The combination of immediate problem-solving and long-term improvement planning reflected values that had sustained departmental effectiveness despite external pressures and arbitrary administrative decisions. The investigation into Linda Thompson's potential co-conspirators among outside contractors revealed a network of vendor relationships that appeared designed to generate unnecessary renovation work through false technical assessments and manufactured maintenance emergencies. The scope of potential fraud extended beyond individual employee harassment to systematic exploitation of corporate resources for personal financial gain. Robert Chen's decision to pursue both civil and criminal legal action against Linda Thompson and her associated contractors demonstrated corporate commitment to accountability and deterrence that would protect company assets while sending clear messages about consequences for fraud and abuse of administrative authority. The legal response elevated the situation beyond internal personnel matters to broader questions about institutional integrity and protection of stakeholder interests. The systematic nature of the deception and the potential financial damages justify comprehensive legal action to recover costs and prevent similar schemes from affecting our operations or other companies in the Austin business community. Robert explained during the follow-up briefing about legal strategies and anticipated timelines for resolution. These actions will also support policy development and staff training that strengthen our institutional safeguards against future abuse of trust and authority. His commitment to legal accountability provided additional validation for employees who had experienced arbitrary treatment, while establishing precedents that could benefit the broader business community through exposure of fraudulent practices and strengthening of oversight mechanisms. The combination of immediate correction and long-term deterrence demonstrated leadership understanding of both institutional and community responsibilities. The discovery of Linda's systematic collection of personal information about TechFlow employees through her husband's auto repair business revealed privacy violations that extended beyond workplace harassment to fundamental breaches of community trust and professional service relationships. The abuse of casual business interactions to gather intelligence for targeting specific individuals represented a sophisticated form of manipulation that required both legal response and community awareness. David's decision to terminate his business relationship with Thompson's Auto Repair reflected the personal dimensions of betrayal that extended beyond professional consequences to violation of social contracts and community connections that sustained local business networks. The exploitation of trust relationships for gathering private information demonstrated cynical manipulation of social capital for personal advantage. The violation of trust and privacy through exploitation of business relationships affects not only individual victims, but the entire community network of professional and personal connections that support local economic activity, David explained, while researching alternative automotive service providers who maintained appropriate boundaries between business relationships and personal privacy. This kind of systematic manipulation threatens the social foundations that make community business relationships possible. His analysis highlighted the broader implications of Linda's deceptive practices for community trust and business relationships that extended far beyond individual workplace conflicts. The systematic abuse of social connections for gathering private information represented a form of social predation that required both personal and institutional responses to prevent future victimization. The implementation of enhanced background verification procedures for all administrative positions represented institutional learning from the crisis and commitment to preventing similar hiring mistakes that could expose employees and company assets to arbitrary authority and potential fraud. The comprehensive policy improvements demonstrated corporate maturity in addressing systemic weaknesses that had enabled Linda's abuse of power. Angela Foster's presentation of new oversight mechanisms for Facilities Management Authority included mandatory consultation requirements, independent technical verification for major renovation projects, and enhanced accountability measures that would prevent arbitrary exercise of administrative power while ensuring that legitimate building maintenance needs were addressed efficiently and transparently. The new policies require multi-level approval for any workspace changes that significantly affect employee working conditions, independent contractor verification for all technical assessments that justify major renovation projects, and enhanced documentation standards that create accountability for administrative decisions. Angela explained during the policy briefing that established comprehensive safeguards against future abuse of Facilities Management Authority. Her systematic approach to institutional improvement demonstrated human resources' commitment to learning from crisis while strengthening employee protections and corporate governance mechanisms. The combination of preventative measures and accountability standards would reduce vulnerability to similar abuse while maintaining operational flexibility for legitimate facilities management needs. The restoration of my corner office proceeded with efficiency that reflected both institutional commitment to corrective action and recognition of the professional damages that had been inflicted through arbitrary administrative decisions. The return to adequate workspace, technological infrastructure, and professional environment restored the foundation for continued achievement and career advancement that Linda's targeting had threatened to undermine. The upgraded security features and enhanced technological capabilities that accompanied the office restoration represented corporate investment in both individual employee success and broader improvements to workplace infrastructure that would benefit entire departments and operational efficiency. The combination of personal restoration and institutional improvement demonstrated leadership commitment to learning from crisis while strengthening foundations for future success. Michael Davis's analysis of the department's performance throughout the crisis revealed that collaborative response and mutual support had actually strengthened team cohesion and operational effectiveness, despite the external pressures and arbitrary disruptions that Linda's decisions had created. The shared experience of principled resistance to unjust authority had reinforced departmental values and professional relationships. The way everyone came together to maintain client service and support each other through the crisis demonstrates the strength of our professional relationships and shared commitment to excellence, Michael observed during the post-crisis evaluation of departmental performance and lessons learned. The external challenges actually reinforced our collaborative approach and highlighted the values that make our team particularly effective. His assessment reflected broader recognition that institutional crises could strengthen organizational culture and professional relationships when handled with integrity and mutual support. The combination of individual resilience and collective response had not only survived arbitrary authority, but had demonstrated the power of principled resistance and collaborative problem-solving. The comprehensive settlement agreement that addressed both financial compensation for professional damages and institutional commitments to policy improvements provided closure that acknowledged the serious violations while establishing foundations for preventing similar abuse of authority in the future. The combination of personal restoration and systemic reform represented institutional maturity in addressing complex crises. Robert Chen's personal apology for the institutional failures that had enabled Linda's abuse of authority demonstrated leadership accountability and commitment to comprehensive correction that extended beyond legal requirements to moral responsibility for employee welfare and professional development. His recognition of systemic weaknesses and commitment to improvement provided confidence in institutional learning and adaptation. The failures in hiring procedures and oversight mechanisms that enabled this abuse of authority represent institutional shortcomings that demand comprehensive correction and ongoing vigilance to protect employee rights and maintain corporate integrity, Robert acknowledged during the final resolution meeting. These improvements will strengthen our institutional safeguards while reinforcing our commitment to fair treatment and professional development for all employees. His comprehensive acceptance of institutional responsibility provided validation for employees while establishing leadership credibility for future organizational challenges and opportunities. The combination of accountability and improvement demonstrated corporate maturity in learning from crisis while strengthening foundations for continued success and ethical operations. The broader investigation into facilities management practices throughout the Austin business community revealed that Linda Thompson's fraudulent schemes had affected multiple companies and numerous employees, suggesting systematic predatory behavior that extended far beyond individual workplace conflicts to broader patterns of exploitation and abuse of administrative authority. The cooperation between TechFlow Solutions and other affected companies in pursuing legal action and sharing information about deceptive practices demonstrated community commitment to accountability and prevention that could protect future employees and corporate assets from similar schemes. The collaborative response elevated individual justice to broader community protection and institutional integrity. Jennifer Hayes's promotion to expanded responsibilities that included oversight of facilities management decisions represented institutional recognition of the leadership and professional competence she had demonstrated throughout the crisis. Her systematic approach to protecting departmental interests and employee welfare had proven instrumental in exposing Linda's deceptions, and coordinating effective institutional response. The leadership and analytical thinking you demonstrated throughout this crisis confirm your readiness for expanded responsibilities and broader influence in corporate decision-making, Robert explained during the promotion announcement that recognized professional growth through principled handling of institutional challenges. Your commitment to both employee welfare and operational excellence exemplifies the kind of leadership that strengthens our entire organization. Her advancement represented both personal achievement and institutional validation of the values and professional approaches that had successfully resisted arbitrary authority while maintaining operational effectiveness and team morale. The combination of individual recognition and systemic improvement demonstrated that principled leadership could emerge stronger from institutional crises. The comprehensive policy improvements that emerged from the crisis investigation created templates for other Austin companies seeking to strengthen their own institutional safeguards against administrative abuse and fraudulent practices. The sharing of lessons learned and best practices demonstrated corporate citizenship and community responsibility that extended beyond individual company interests to broader business community welfare. The establishment of industry-wide standards for facilities management oversight and employee protection reflected the broader impact of principled resistance to arbitrary authority and systematic exposure of deceptive practices. The institutional changes that resulted from individual courage and professional integrity demonstrated the potential for personal actions to create systemic improvements that benefit entire communities. As I settled back into my restored corner office, watching the familiar Austin skyline through windows that had never actually required replacement, I reflected on the complex journey from arbitrary targeting to institutional vindication that had tested both personal resilience and corporate values. The experience had revealed both vulnerabilities in institutional protections and the ultimate strength of principled resistance, supported by professional relationships and systematic investigation. The enhanced security and upgraded technology that now characterized my workspace served as daily reminders of institutional commitment to learning from crisis, while providing tools for continued professional growth and achievement. The combination of personal restoration and systemic improvement created foundations for future success that were stronger and more secure than the arrangements that Linda Thompson's arbitrary decisions had temporarily disrupted. The comprehensive resolution of the facilities management crisis had demonstrated that corporate institutions, despite their vulnerabilities to abuse and deception, ultimately possess the capacity for self-correction and improvement when guided by principled leadership and supported by employees willing to resist arbitrary authority through systematic documentation and collaborative response. The legal proceedings against Linda Thompson and her co-conspirators continue to unfold with prospects for substantial financial recovery and criminal accountability that would provide deterrence against similar schemes while validating the serious nature of systematic fraud and abuse of administrative authority. The combination of civil and criminal justice demonstrated institutional commitment to comprehensive accountability and community protection. David's research into Linda Thompson's background revealed a pattern of similar targeting and exploitation that had affected other professionals and companies throughout her career, suggesting systematic predatory behavior that used administrative positions and social connections to gather intelligence and create opportunities for harassment and potential financial gain through fraudulent renovation schemes. The exposure of this broader pattern provided context for understanding my own experience as part of systematic exploitation rather than isolated workplace conflict, while contributing to legal cases and community awareness that could prevent future victimization of other professionals and companies. The transformation of personal crisis into community protection demonstrated the broader value of principled resistance to arbitrary authority. The strengthened relationships within our department and the enhanced reputation that emerged from professional handling of institutional crisis created opportunities for expanded client relationships and business development that exceeded our previous achievements. The demonstration of resilience and integrity under pressure had actually strengthened our professional standing and market position. The industry recognition that followed our department's handling of the crisis included speaking opportunities at business conferences and requests for consultation about institutional safeguards and crisis management that established new revenue streams and professional development opportunities. The transformation of victimization into expertise demonstrated the potential for personal growth and professional advancement through principled response to adversity. As the legal proceedings reached their conclusion with substantial financial settlements and criminal convictions that validated the serious nature of the violations while providing resources for continued institutional improvements, I found myself reflecting on the complex journey from arbitrary targeting to comprehensive vindication that had tested and ultimately strengthened both personal resilience and institutional integrity. The lasting changes in corporate policy, industry standards, and community awareness that emerged from our collective response to systematic abuse and deception created protections that would benefit future employees and companies while demonstrating the power of principled resistance and collaborative problem-solving in addressing complex institutional challenges. The corner office that had once represented individual achievement now symbolized broader principles of institutional integrity and employee protection that had been tested through crisis and emerged stronger through comprehensive response and systematic improvement. The view of Austin's evolving skyline served as daily inspiration for continued professional growth within institutional frameworks that had proven capable of learning, adapting, and strengthening in response to challenges that tested their fundamental values and commitments. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.